The neighborhood of Charlestown in Boston has gained a reputation for being the center of countless bank robberies over the years. Among those who have mastered the craft are 4 lifelong friends, Doug, Jim, Glonsey, and Desmond, who pull off these heists together with remarkable precision. Doug is the mastermind behind all their plans, and he carefully explains every detail the group needs to memorize for their next operation. When a security guard enters the bank carrying a bag of money, they seize the opportunity to shove him aside, rush inside, and quickly take control of the situation. Everyone present is forced to lie face down on the floor, and their cell phones are taken away. After the robbers clear out the cashier station, they order the bank manager, Claire Kesey, to open the vault. After collecting all the money and placing the security camera's hard drive inside a microwave to destroy it, the robbers begin pouring bleach all over the place to eliminate any possible traces of DNA evidence. Unbeknownst to them, Claire presses the silent alarm button with her foot. When the robbers realize what has happened, Jim assaults the assistant manager, believing he is the one responsible. As Jim moves violently, Claire catches a glimpse of the tattoo on his neck. Seeing that the police are closing in on them, Jim makes the decision to take Claire as a hostage, something they have never done before. They blindfold her before removing their masks, and once they are far enough from the bank, they drop her off at the shoreline. The crime scene is taken over by the FBI, led by Special Agent Adam Frawley. He notices that the robbers handle every possible detail carefully and leave no evidence behind, which means they must be professional. His men also find the van used in the robbery, but it has been burned, and no one in the neighborhood is willing to come forward as a witness. The following day, Frawley questions Claire, and she shares only the limited information she knows. She chooses not to mention the tattoo, as the robbers warn her they will kill her if she reveals anything to the FBI. Meanwhile, the 4 robbers gather to discuss Jim's terrible decision to take a hostage. But when Jim arrives, he brings even worse news. He has Claire's ID and realizes she lives nearby, meaning he might run into her often. He suggests following her to make sure she is scared enough to keep quiet. However, Doug steps in and says he will handle it instead, claiming it is because Jim has already been to prison and he doesn't want him going back. But the truth is, Doug doesn't trust how violent Jim has been lately. That day, Doug and Jim go around the neighborhood to make all the necessary payments to their gun dealer, their car dealer, and their boss, Fergie, an Irish mobster who runs a flower shop business. They then spend the whole night drinking, gambling, and doing drugs with the call girls. The following night, the 4 of them are drinking at a bar when they are approached by Chris, Jim's sister, and a single mother. She and Doug used to be together, and she says she misses him, but Doug doesn't want anything to do with her and walks away. However, while Doug is watching television in his apartment, Chris enters using a duplicate key and convinces Doug to do a TikTok. The next day, Doug sets out to follow Claire. When he sees her enter a laundromat, he follows her inside and casually approaches her. Claire suddenly starts crying when she notices bloodstains on her clothes, reminding her of the robbery. Doug seizes the opportunity to approach her and ask if she is okay. To ease her distress, Doug invites Claire to drink and talk. That night, they go out for dinner, even though Doug lies and tells her that he works in construction and that his father lives in the suburbs, instead of being in prison and a criminal like he is. He then takes her onto a boat, claiming it belongs to a friend, but in reality, he has just stolen it so they would have something to use. When Claire asks him about the recent robberies in their area, he simply says that they are troubling. The next day, when Doug meets with Jim, he informs him that the situation is under control and there is no need to kill Claire, as Jim wants. On the other hand, Frawley and his men enter the house of a criminal contact of his, and after questioning him about the robbery, they get a clue when he mentions that these robbers don't do trucks like others, they know how to work the box. This kind of knowledge can only be gained by working in a place like Vericom, so they begin to look into work records and employee profile. Frawley also meets Claire for lunch to ask her a few more questions and tries to flirt with her, but she mentions that she is already sort of seeing someone. Claire and Doug begin dating, a fact Doug keeps secret from his gang. As they grow closer, they begin to share more about each other. Claire admits she's working with the FBI, and Doug pretends to be casually curious, asking her if they have any possible suspects. She also mentions the tattoo she saw, unsure if she should bring it up to Frawley, fearing it might get her killed. Doug advises her to keep it a secret for now, suggesting she can use it as leverage later, especially if it helps her avoid witness protection. In return, Doug shares that his mom left him when he was 6, and although he tried to find her, his dad never did anything about it. On their way home, Claire mentions that she has to take a longer route because gang members throw bottles at her car if she uses the regular one. After dropping her off at home, Doug picks up Jim, and together they go to intimidate the assailants. Doug only beats them up and plants some drugs, warning them to leave before the week ends, but Jim gets carried away, shooting one of the men in the leg before removing his mask and revealing his face. As they head home, it is apparent that Doug is no longer happy with Jim's violent actions. The next day, Frawley finds Desmond's employee file at Vericom, and his sick days match the dates of various bank robberies. This lets them follow him to a family barbecue, where they uncover the identities of the entire gang, though they still lack the hard evidence needed to arrest them. For now, Frawley instructs his agents to continue surveillance on all of them. While having lunch together on a sunny day, Claire tells Doug that the weather reminds her of the day her brother died. When she steps away to use the restroom, Jim unexpectedly shows up and sits with Doug, who grows concerned that Jim might discover his secret, so he tries to get him to leave, but to no avail. When Claire returns, Jim is clearly shocked to see her, but he still goes along with it and chats for a while before leaving. Doug makes sure to say goodbye to him, using the moment as an excuse to cover the tattoo with his hand. Later, Jim confronts Doug about Claire, thinking it's a terrible idea to sleep with someone who could send them to jail. He hasn't told the others yet, but he wants Doug to take action and focuses on their next job instead. Doug disagrees, saying they're not ready for the next robbery because he doesn't trust the guys they'll be working with, so they should find someone else. However, Jim insists, and Doug finally agrees, but only on the condition that this will be his last job. Afterward, he visits his father in prison to tell him he might be gone for a while and to ask why he never searched for his mother. His father responds that there was no point in trying to make a mother out of someone who clearly didn't want to be one. When Friday arrives, it's time for their next operation. They collect hair from a salon to use as fake evidence, clean themselves thoroughly, and disinfect all their equipment with bleach to remove any fingerprints. Using their vehicle, they follow an armored truck and rob it as soon as it parks. Everything goes smoothly at first, but one of the guards attempts to fight back and points his gun at them. With the police closing in, they shoot the guard to avoid further delays and rush back to the car, speeding off to avoid getting caught. They cause several crashes along the way, and when the police finally box them in, they open fire and push through, retracing their route to escape. Glonzi pulls off some daring driving maneuvers, causing the police cars to collide with one another. They eventually lose the cops when they reach their fourth crew member, who's waiting in a separate vehicle. They quickly switch cars and set the old one ablaze to block the road and cover their escape. Frawley, monitoring the situation from his office, instructs the officers to shut down the bridge, but he's too late. The thieves have already made it across. While switching cars once more, a nearby officer spots them but chooses to look the other way.
Fuck was that? You didn't want to end up on the wall at the VFW.
Although they still lack solid evidence, Frawley decides to bring the four in for questioning and sends his team to pick them up. He has them recite the lines the robbers said during the heist, then tries to get answers, but Jim stays completely silent and asks for a lawyer, while Doug, confident they have nothing to charge him with, points out that they've always known they were being watched, since everyone recognizes FBI surveillance vans. Frawley's next step is to reach out to Claire for more leads, but when he calls the bank, he's surprised to learn she has resigned. Now growing suspicious, he has her phone tapped and discovers she's been secretly keeping in touch with Doug. Doug finds out about her resignation when they meet, and he gives her a diamond necklace, then seizes the moment to ask her to leave town with him, and she agrees. After their date, Claire gets an unexpected visit from Frawley, who spots the necklace and then reveals Doug's profile to her, finally telling her the truth about him. Meanwhile, Doug meets with Jim, who brings up a new job offer from Fergie, but Doug turns it down and tells him to find someone else because he's done. This angers Jim, who accuses him of abandoning Chris and her child, but Doug reminds him that no one really knows who the father is. He then thanks Jim's family for taking him in when his own father went to prison, but says it's time for him to move on. Jim reminds him that he once killed a man to protect Doug and spent 9 years in prison for it. Doug says he hasn't forgotten and thanks him for the sacrifice, but insists that he wants to start a new life somewhere else. Doug then goes to see Fergie to tell him he's out, but Fergie refuses to find a replacement, insisting that Doug is the mastermind and he wants no one else. He reveals that Doug's father once tried to walk away too, which is why he got Doug's mother hooked on drugs. She didn't leave, she died from overdoses, and Doug has been lied to all this time. Fergie warns that if Doug refuses the job, Claire will suffer the same fate as his mom. Doug immediately rushes to Claire's place to make sure she's okay, but she kicks him out, refusing to hear any apology or explanation. From that point on, he keeps watch over her apartment and spots one of Fergie's men hanging a funeral wreath on her door. Doug rips it down, realizing he has no choice but to go through with the job. After visiting Chris to tell her that he will be gone after this job, Doug tries to approach Claire again and promises he will never hurt her. He tells her that he has robbed many banks but has never killed anyone, then asks her to wait for him before leaving. The gang gathers to hear Fergie's plan. He has inside information to rob Fenway Park, and they will do it the morning after the big game, when the safes will be full. As they go over the details, Frawley approaches Chris at a bar, suspecting she might be the weak link in the family. After pretending to flirt with her, he reveals his badge and hints that he knows she's a mule for Fergie. When she asks for a lawyer, he takes his chance to sow doubt by pointing out that despite her long relationship with Doug, he never bought her a diamond necklace. Chris gives him a false lead, so on the day of the operation, Frawley and his men follow the wrong truck. Meanwhile, Chris visits Doug to ask him to take her with him because she also wants a new life, but Doug kicks her out after telling her he is leaving with someone else. Frawley later finds her in the hospital after she crashed her car while intoxicated. He promises to arrange protection for her and her child in exchange for information. Feeling like she's always being taken advantage of, she reluctantly agrees and tells him about Fenway Park. While Desmond uses his expertise as an electrician to disable the alarms and security cameras, Doug and Jim disguise themselves as police officers and gain entry to the stadium through one of Fergie's contacts. They encounter some employees and guards, but their police disguise fails, and soon they're drawing their guns, forcing the men to the floor to tie them up. They then head to the cash room, ordering the employees to open the door and warning them not to make any distress calls, threatening that they have people outside their homes and will harm their wives if they try anything. Naturally, the employees comply, and after filling their bags with as much cash as they can, they head to the parking lot where Glonsey and Desmond are waiting with an ambulance. The FBI has already surrounded the perimeter, but as soon as Jim notices them attempting to sneak in, he opens fire. A shootout erupts between the thieves and the agents, with Glonsey getting shot in the chaos, but luckily, the bullet hits his vest. While the other three continue to shoot, Desmond sneaks back and opens the door to help push the truck with the agents out of there. After closing the door again, Doug tells Desmond that unlike the others, he doesn't have a police record, so he could walk out and only serve 7 years, and none of them would blame him for it. However, Desmond feels insulted by this and stays, throwing the F-word at Doug. The FBI then throws stun grenades through the windows. While the thieves' senses are compromised, they send in special agents who shoot Desmond as soon as he stands up.
They ain't looking for fucking cops.
Glonsey comes up with a daring plan. He will drive out and draw the FBI's attention, while Doug and Jim change back into their cop outfits and slip out through the main door, knowing the FBI won't suspect police officers. Doug is concerned about Glonsey's safety if he goes through with it, but Glonsey reassures him, claiming he's a skilled driver and knows how to get away. The ambulance manages to drive down the block without any problems, but when the FBI can't stop it by shooting at its tires, a sniper takes Glonsey out with a shot to the head. As the FBI focuses on the ambulance, believing all the thieves are inside, Doug and Jim manage to change into their cop uniforms and blend in with other officers, making a clean getaway. The trick doesn't hold up for long though. The FBI gets a tip from the employees who had been tied up, claiming they were ambushed by cops. As a result, Frawley quickly begins searching for any officers acting suspiciously. He soon spots Jim hastily walking away with a large bag slung over his shoulder and follows him into a parking lot. When Frawley calls out to him by name, Jim opens fire, and before long, he's surrounded by the FBI and police officers, with Doug watching from across the street. Frawley manages to wound Jim in the leg, forcing him to take cover behind a mailbox, only to realize he's out of ammo. Desperate to avoid returning to prison, Jim chooses to end his life, stepping out with his guns drawn, prompting the agents to shoot him on the spot. Doug ensures his sacrifice wasn't in vain by stealing a police car while everyone is focused on checking Jim's body. He heads to the flower shop, where he kills both Fergie and his henchman, escaping unscathed thanks to the bulletproof vest he's wearing.
Remember who clipped you, and that's for you.
Afterward, Doug retrieves some hidden cash and calls Claire, unaware that the FBI is in her apartment, listening in on the call. Claire tells him to come over and pretends to be alone, but Doug sees through the lie since he's watching her place from a nearby building. Still, he agrees to meet, telling her to come to the back door in an hour. As they speak, he apologizes once more, and Claire subtly warns him that it's a setup by mentioning sunny days, a phrase only they understand, prompting Doug to play along and keep up the act. The FBI waits with Claire for someone who never arrives, unaware that Doug quietly buries money in her garden and leaves a mocking note on Frawley's car. He then escapes the city disguised in an MBTA uniform, boarding a train unnoticed. Frawley grows suspicious of Claire's mention of sunny days, but the phrase is too vague to use against her, leaving her clear of any charges. In the following days, Claire discovers the money Doug left behind, along with a note saying that maybe someday they'll see each other again. She chooses to donate the money to help renovate the local ice hockey rink where Doug used to play, dedicating it to the memory of his mother. Thank you so much for staying till the end. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell for future uploads.